You're listening to the Expert Edge podcast, brought to you by Find a Business Expert. I'm your host, Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist and expert in my field. In each episode, I chat to a different business expert about their business and what gives them the edge. Bhupinder Sidhu, commonly known as Sid, is the founder of the Find a Business Expert platform and an expert in his own right on helping businesses to scale. Welcome to the Expert Edge, Sid. Now, as the founder of Find a Business Expert, you had to be the first guest on the show. So my first question to you, Sid, is what were you like at school? What was your favourite subject?
Hi, Liz, and great to get the podcast up and running. So I was a hustler at school, not surprisingly, a little bit mischievous. And in terms of favourite subject, I didn't really click at school or college. I don't think I got the whole education piece until the final year of my degree. But if I had to pick a subject, it would have been really maths and economics. We didn't do business studies back then. So I think that probably would have been the subject for me. But school wasn't really for me. I think I was hustling more than I was learning, and I matured quite late in life to realise that it's an important foundation.
Yeah. So after college and your degree and all that, what was your first job? What did you go out and do?
Well, my first job was a lot younger than that because my dad owned a shop.
Right.
I started working for my dad at 9, 10, child labour. But he gave me a lot of discipline. So, Saturday mornings was up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the Birmingham greengrocer market and pick up all the stuff there. So, that was my first job. I then, while at college, I worked for Next in retail as a Saturday job, and then filled in during summer holidays. And then university, I worked, I don't know if he's still around anymore, but 192 Director Inquiries.
Oh, yeah.
I was sort of on a BT programme and working there. And then when I came out of university, I went into my first startup, a company called Teleperformance, which was a startup in Birmingham. And just a load of graduates had joined at the same time, and it looked like fun, so I jumped on board.
Right. So fast forward then, and you're now running Find a Business Expert. How did that come about, Sid? And tell us what it is for a start.
Find a Business Expert. It's a platform for buyers to find credible suppliers, businesses that are driven by delivering good client outcomes. And I think how it came about was I've always personally been somebody who doesn't like to see other people taken advantage of. In my own experience in business, and when I've gone to a lot of events, I've seen sellers overselling and overcommitting buyers. So selling more than they need, acting as the front person and then passing it off to somebody else. I felt that there was a better way for businesses to connect with each other and get what they wanted from trusted suppliers, from the buyer side, and then from the supplier side, which is our experts. I'm also a massive fan of entrepreneurship and owner-led businesses, and I just saw that the larger, the corporates and businesses with deep pockets were drowning out the smaller, the SME businesses online. I could see even 6 years ago that AI, internet, technology, is the way that we'll do business moving forward. And there's reports now, quite a lot of independent verification that 90% of buyers start their search online when they're looking for a service. They're going to Google. Yeah. And I just felt that the bigger businesses were drowning out the smaller businesses. So it all came about because I wanted to make sure that businesses were served well by really good suppliers, and those really good suppliers were local, owner-led, and I could give them visibility to get found, to go and get the buyers. So that's really the premise behind it all.
Yeah. So how does Find a Business Expert work? How do you vet your experts on the platform, and what do they get from it?
So the vetting process is around qualifications, experience, professional associations, compliance with Companies House and the financial requirements of an organisation, credit score. So the vetting tends to be, is that business and the individual within the business have the right experience and credentials and background to be delivering that service. Probably the best example is accountancy surprisingly isn't a protected term in the UK. So I could set up a SIDS accountant tomorrow and have all the nice branding and sort of get out and acquire clients without any formal qualifications, which I just found absolutely nuts. So it's right, and then you can apply that to lots of other sectors, and also cyclically I was seeing that you'd have groups of people that will jump on the next big thing. So Y2K, GDPR, Brexit, and people would know a little bit more than the buyer and then sell themselves as an expert and a service deliverer in that space. And I just felt that for buyers, there were, again, if we could act as an organisation that did the due diligence for them, that heavy lifting, made sure that these experts did have experience, qualification, and it doesn't have to be qualifications. It can be just years of you've worked in that space and you've delivered really good outcomes for your customer. So that's the sort of vetting process. Alongside, we check shareholder and director backgrounds. If there have been insolvencies, again, that's part of the landscape for entrepreneurship. But it's how they've been dealt with. Have creditors been left behind? Is that a recurring theme? Which often, if it is, it suggests that the ethos of the owners, isn't aligned with delivering great customer outcomes. So we look at that, as an overall package before we bring our experts on board, and then continually, we check reliability as well. So if a buyer connects with one of our experts and doesn't get the outcome that they've agreed, and it's important to say, not the outcome that the buyer is looking for, because quite often the expectation and the budget and the delivery can be quite different. So it's what's been agreed between the two parties. That's not delivered, and the buyer raises a concern to us, organisation. We've got a free resolution service where we'll go and investigate that, and if it's upheld, then the expert is taken off the platform. So buyers that are coming to us know that everybody that's on there currently has been vetted and has passed our vetting process and has not had a complaint raised against them, at least not to us. They may have one somewhere else. We can't govern it all, but you haven't had one to us. And then for the experts, what they get is SEO, PPC, social media promotion, access to a very large business to business distribution channel. They get networking, events. I think there's about 7 things. I'll probably say about 4 or 5. The vetted badge, which again is social currency, and a community that is very supportive. If they engage. So we've got about 7 benefits that we package up. We retail that at sort of £60, including VAT, if the supplier, the expert takes a 6-month contract. If it's monthly, it's sort of 72, and if it's annual, I think it's like £44 or 42, I think it is. So different price points depending on the length of the contract. They get these 7 benefits, and what we're aiming to do is give our experts exposure to a broad mix of marketing channels. And maybe it sounds a bit negative around a shallow level, because obviously you can't go deeply into any of these at that sort of investment level, but it gives our experts 7 different marketing channels that they can test and learn. And what we want them to do is, where channels are working particularly well for them, they can then go on and invest deeper in that with relevant experts, not with us. I'm very clear that we don't want to tread on our experts' toes and offer services that they offer, but we will get them found, normally top 5 organically for their service in a location, drive them to a landing page which is built on the trust equation, which is around credibility, reliability, intimacy, which means that you make it easy for people to check you out, and self-orientation, you make it easy for them to connect with you, so it's built on that. And then we drive traffic to their digital assets, their website, LinkedIn, calendar. And from that point, then the expert takes over in terms of trying to convert those inquiries into a conversation.
Yeah. So who are your experts? If people are looking for a service, what kind of people are on your platform?
Lee, everything you need as an entrepreneur, from initially having that idea, that light bulb moment, why don't I do this, to turning that into a business that you're launching, then turning that into something that you're scaling, and ultimately at the other end, something that you're exiting from. So we've got supply experts, we call them suppliers or experts interchangeably, but we've got experts that will serve the whole life cycle of a business idea right through to the exit at the other end.
Yeah, and everything in between, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Sid, I'd like to get to know you a little bit better now through the next kind of questions. So, if you could go back in time to before when you started Find a Business Expert, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yes, 100%. And I'm sure, Liz, this is what most people say to you. So, having come out of university with accountancy and finance degree, at the time, again, young, foolish, I didn't want to go on and do professional examinations. So I went straight into work thinking I'll come back to this at a later point.
Yeah.
And once you start getting the taste of money and the freedom, you don't go back. So I think that for me, a big regret that I didn't continue with professional exams to become, I wouldn't necessarily have become an accountant. And I think I realised that in my degree when my social circle consisted of everybody that wasn't on my degree. I didn't want to be like a bean counter, because accountancy back then was very different to what it is today.
Yeah.
I think today, good accountants can add a lot of value, particularly because the software does a lot of compliance. It takes the compliance away, which means that, strategically add value. So for me at the time, though, wasn't a career I think I really wanted to follow. So didn't do the exams, went back to Aston Uni and did a diploma in marketing. So came out with quite a unique mix of finance and sales and marketing. You tend to be one or the other. But I think, if I could go back in time, I would tell myself to go and do the hard yards of 3 more years of working and professional examinations.
Yeah. And kind of related to that, do you have any tips that you would like to pass on to new entrepreneurs?
Not related to that, but for new entrepreneurs, absolutely, and it's probably the purpose of Find a Business Expert, is choose your supply chain carefully. Don't be lazy around just asking people for recommendations, or even worse, going on social media and say, can anybody recommend a voice artist, for example? Can anyone recommend X? Because I think we've done some research on this, and a lot of the recommendations that come back, about 90% haven't actually used the person they're recommending. It's either they recommend them because they get some points in a group, or it's friends, family, people they know. So the loyalty isn't to you who's asking the buyer, it's to the supplier. So I would, and again, my success over the years, if you look at John Caldwell, the Caldwell Group, and Richard Harpin with HomeServe, those businesses had very robust procurement processes and due diligence, and that I've seen is missing from the small medium business landscape, where we still do business with people because we know them, they're recommended, we don't do due diligence. So I'd absolutely say do the due diligence on your supply chain. If you haven't got time, obviously come to an organisation like us, Find a Business Expert, because we don't charge buyers to come and look at potential suppliers. That would be one tip. Another tip, DIY, is a false economy. So trying to build your own website, trying to do your own voiceover, trying to do your own graphics.
Yeah.
I just think that if you're starting a business, it's like foundations of a house. The more solid the foundation, the more likely that it will pass all the necessary building controls, and it will be standing in 100 years' time.
Yeah.
And you start with a flaky foundation, and ultimately I think you just struggle all the time because buyers can see a business that's had investment.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, business has been invested in versus a business that's been done out of a bedroom and it's all DIY.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I would say invest. And on that point, I think it's a false economy as well. Quite often people say, well, I can do this work in the evenings and weekends. Everything has an opportunity cost, whether that's financial, emotional, business. And as an entrepreneur, put value on your time. I think it's an absolute minimum, £50. I think it should be probably more than that. But let's say every hour you spend on your business, not selling and doing your, what you're about, cost you out at £50 an hour, and then see whether you're getting value.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you've been in business for a number of years now, Sid. So what is the best customer feedback that you've ever received?
I think, probably because I've ended up where I am now, it's around, best customer feedback is that I made a difference to that individual. So the roles that I've completed in all of my different guises have always been about putting the customer first and then making sure that they get whatever it is that we've agreed that they will get, and then the feedback from that, from people saying you've made a real difference. And in this space, there's so many businesses that have joined us and have come back and said, without you, my business would still not be here today, because we help them get found, get into a community, get support. I think actually, the best feedback, because it came from an accountant, when an accountant tells you that this is the best investment they've ever made, we know how frugal, then you know that you're onto something, and we've had that on Find a Business Expert on a couple of occasions.
Yeah. So outside of work then, Sid, what's the best thing you've ever done?
Best thing, I don't know whether this counts, because some people could say that, well, that's a commitment. The best thing I've ever done is, unfortunately, I got divorced when my son was 3. Then I moved into South Wales. I lived in Cardiff, lived in Swansea. I've never missed. I see him every other weekend.
Yeah.
It's a 6-hour round trip. I don't know whether people would say, well, that's a given. I know people who haven't had that commitment to. So for me, I feel the best thing I've ever done is never let him down. Never not, and every other weekend, it's 3 hours there, 3 hours back. That cuts into your own life and stuff. But I felt, it was something that obviously, because I never thought about it, I just did it.
Yeah.
But I look back on it now, and the best thing I've ever done is always made sure I turned up for whatever, even though I was like 200 miles away.
Yeah, yeah. How old is he now, Sid?
20, and interestingly, when he gets about 18, I said to him, right, now you can come down and see me. And he went, and it's about, I think it's about a 4-hour coach trip.
Yeah.
And he went, Dad, are you mad? He said, I'm not spending 8 hours every weekend coming to see you. And I said, well, I've had to do that for you. He said, yeah, but that was your job.
Sounds like you brought him up right there, Sid.
Yeah. I see. He's got a very good value on time. And not prepared to waste that in seeing his dad.
So, if you were being cast away to a desert island, Sid, what's the one luxury that you couldn't do without?
My one would be phone. I'd take my phone. I guess then you may say there's no signal.
How are you going to charge it as well?
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. So for me, it would be music. It would be any device that I could get music on that doesn't need charging and doesn't need Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah. And what kind of music? Anything in particular?
Big fan of house music. So back in the day, I used to run some events. This was sort of 1989 up to 95. But overall, my genre is very mixed. So I like classical music, I like rap, I love pop. I love 80s music. I'm stuck in the 80s, Liz. my wife. So I don't know if it's the Top of the Pops stuff that goes on a Friday night on BBC Four, and there's a lot of 80s stuff on that, and that to me is the perfect Friday night.
Yeah. Oh, sounds good. So that's the music. What about reading? Can you recommend a book to me that you've enjoyed or got something out of?
Yeah, no, definitely Good to Great, James Collins, recommended to me by Richard Harpin, Home Serve, Entrepreneur, and it stuck with me. I think he recommended it was 2005. Oh,
Yeah.
that's 20 years ago, and I still will pick that book up and just read a section of it because I just think it's a brilliant book for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any kind of favourite tools that you use to keep yourself organised within business?
Calendar. Yeah. My life is on my calendar. So literally, everything from walking the dog to events with my daughter, my wife. If it's not in my calendar, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So that and more recently, AI. Massive fan of AI. I got exposed though probably about a couple of months ago because I wrote an anniversary message to my wife using ChatGPT. And I thought it read beautifully. My wife said to me, "That's not your words."
Rumbled.
Yeah, rumble, exactly that.
So, now, this can be to do with either work or life, whatever you like, but is there a best piece of advice that you've ever received from someone?
Yes, yeah. From my dad around, what he said to me was, doesn't matter how big a property you own, you'll only ever use 3 rooms. It doesn't, and he used to say, the more space that you've got, the more time it takes to find things. And then the other one, he said, look, if you've got 2 cars on the drive, you can only ever drive 1 car at one time.
Yes.
I think all of that messaging for him was about live within your means, live in what you need. Don't be over extravagant. Don't get sucked into capitalist wants of this and that and the other. I think it was all around live within your means, and you can live a very happy life without being opulent. Would that be the word?
Yeah, I think so.
Extravagant. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think kind of related to that, you spread to fill what space you've got, don't you? My daughter is about to move home to live here with us after 5 years away at university. And her room is full of our stuff because we've spread into that. I'm having to rationalise very quickly.
and that, at least that's so true. You fill the space, but then you spend more time. Where's that item? So you walk around trying to find the item. Yeah, and it's all unproductive.
Yeah, yeah. So continuing with the theme of finding things in your house, a meteor, Sid, is heading towards your house right now. It's minutes away from hitting. What one thing you rush to save?
2 things.
Oh, I'll let you have 2 then.
Well, my family, my daughter and my wife.
Fair enough.
Everything else can be replaced. But I think, I'd have to make sure they got out. And the dog hasn't arrived yet because that would be the 3rd. He's coming at the end of the month. But that would be the 3rd thing. But all under one term family. Yeah,
definitely. That sounds good. So, Sid, what would you like to be engraved on your gravestone? How would you like to be remembered?
Interesting. How would I how possibly would be remembered? 10 out of 10 for effort. That's it. Everyone loves a trier, and I do give 100% in everything that I do.
He did his best. How about that?
That's perfect. Yeah. He tried. Yeah. Bless him.
So, Sid, the theme of this podcast is the expert edge. So, what is it that gives you the expert edge?
Hard work and effort. I think one of the most common questions that I get asked in my I'm also an expert as a startup, scale-up consultant, and entrepreneurs, will ask me around, what's the secret to success? What's the silver bullet? And my response is, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
So it is, and sometimes I think if I'd known how difficult this journey was going to be, and I always knew entrepreneurship takes sacrifice, but I didn't realise the level of sacrifice. And, if somebody just said to me, okay, Sid, you're leaving a well-paid 40-hour job with guaranteed income to work 80 hours to think about nothing else but your business and not to have holidays and the nice thing, those things that you were accustomed to before, I might have just had to just take a second consideration around but equally, when the opportunity presented itself to me, my wife was aware that it was an itch that I had to scratch.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I've done that. But if I could go back in time, I'm not sure whether I'd do it again.
Well, I'm very glad that you have done it, Sid. Anyway, so my final question then is, if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best place for them to find you?
The best place is findabusinessexpert.com. So I'm a profiled expert on that. Or my own website is scaleupconsultancy.co.uk. And then LinkedIn. So I'm Bhupinder Sidhu or Sid Sidhu on LinkedIn.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for being my first guest on the Expert Edge podcast. And I will see you on the Find a Business Expert platform too.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed getting to know one of our business experts. If you'd like to discover more of the experts in our community, visit findabusinessexpert.com. And if you'd like to join us as an expert in your field, you can apply via the website. To help this podcast reach more business experts, please subscribe, rate and review.